Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Every fiber of Freddy's being was slowly being infected with worry. He had his ear pressed up to the door of Monty's Raceway, trying to pick up on anything that might be going on out of his sight. All that he heard was silence. Freddy pushed off of the door, messing with the gold pendant around his neck as he paced back and forth, waiting for something to happen. He had been so foolish to let Gregory go in there alone. He wished now, more than ever, he had gone off to find another Fazwatch, just so that he could call and see if the little boy was all right. His eyes darted around the empty lobby. At DJ's tunnels, Chica's kitchen, Roxy's laser tag arena. Silence stared back at him. Gregory's frightened voice came back to him again and again, telling him that Moon, Chica, and Roxy had attacked him, tried to kill him, all because of Vanessa's chips. He couldn't believe it. It wasn't computing right. Vanessa would never do that. Never. It wasn't her, he repeated to himself. Someone had forced her somehow. Maybe Moon's paranoia was right this time, and Afton was revived again somehow, finally coming out of the shadows after decades of peace. It was 2087 after all, and it had been a long time since this company had gone through something horrific. Maybe Afton had turned into a ghost, because by now his body would be deprecated enough that he couldn't have the ability to hurt a kid even if he tried. The silly idea of believing in ghosts kept on trying to poke holes in his theory. All of the animatronics had been programmed with the knowledge of the company's history, so they could know how to properly react if anyone asked them a question about it. But even though Henry told the public everything that he knew, Freddy still found the ghost part less believable. But still, believing in ghosts was better than believing that Vanessa did this intentionally. That was what he kept on telling himself as he paced and waited and paced and waited. It was Afton, all Afton. Vanessa would never do this. Never. Freddy was wrenched out of his thoughts. He heard something. He stared around, something flickering just beyond reach. Freddy turned his back to the door, blocking it. Something was watching him. Something changed, something that he couldn't quite hear or see. Maybe the temperature had dropped, maybe the air pressure changed, maybe gravity got a little bit heavier. A presence just outside of his field of view was slowly prowling closer. And even though he had nothing to prove it with besides a gut feeling, that was all he really needed to know to set off a spiral of paranoia. His breaths got quicker as he tried to cool his systems, fur bristling over his shoulders, claws growing tight as he clenched and unclenched his hands. He backed up until he met the door, his programming sending him a beeping warning to not enter, gaze pivoting left and right with pricked ears, trying to find the source of this new change. Footsteps. The same clanking metal footsteps. But it seemed to muffle just whenever he tried to pay attention to it, seemed to change direction every time he tried to tilt his head and track it down, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. His body was stubbornly ignoring it, while his mind demanded answers. Freddy studied the area, scanning around the room, watching the last few staff bots roll away and finish their various jobs. The shapes of counters, ticket booths, minigames, and gift shops stood out in a dark, unnatural stillness, the usual liveliness and joy now completely decayed. The only source of light was the ceiling, which was entirely made of glass. Right now, clouds covered the full moon, dimming the faint traces of silvery glow that had survived the trip through the glass. Darkness, the one thing he couldn't stand. Freddy tried to calm himself, shifting his weight from foot to foot and tugging on his golden necklace. He couldn't get scared now, no matter how dark it got. Gregory needed him. He stayed vigilant, beginning to pace back and forth in front of the door, just to try and stamp out some of the anxiety trying to flood his thoughts. It was just so quiet. He couldn't stand it. Something was watching him. Something right in front of him. He could feel it. Movement. Freddy stopped pacing, stopped breathing. A paralysis poisoned him, his inner workings getting louder in his fright, his joints locking up as he forced himself to keep blocking the door. Right there, only a few feet ahead of him, he was sure of it. Freddy reached, ashamed of how much his hand was trembling, stretching it forwards. He grabbed at nothing but air, but even as he drew his paw back empty, he still couldn't shake that horrible feeling. It couldn't just be his fear of the dark. He knew who this presence was, even though he was trying his best to avoid it. It's not her. She wouldn't do this, he tried to tell himself. The more times he said it, the more silly it sounded. He was locked in a silent staring contest with an invisible person for a long time, practically able to taste their sweat in the air, feel their warm breath, hear the pounding of their heart. Eventually, just when he was sure that he was going insane, they finally spoke to him. I know it's been a while, but is it okay if I call you Teddy again? The old nickname struck him deeply. Despair sank in him like the opening of a sinkhole. No, no, please, no. Hearing her voice finally tipped him over the edge, his thoughts plunging into stormy denial, throwing up all sorts of wild excuses and questions and demands. He rode through all of it, closing his eyes, taking a deep breath and trying to steady himself. I thought I was Frederick Five Nights Fazbear. Freddy was surprised that he had spoken so early, a nervous laugh escaping him right after. And she laughed too. For a few moments, things took on a shade of normalcy. It was like Vanessa was a kid again, the little girl that had literally known them since they were made. Vanny, one of 2 children that they were tasked to take care of while her dad worked on running the company. The kid who, unlike her brother, actually liked the animatronics and played with them every day. And it didn't seem to matter for a few seconds that she had grown distant lately, that she had gotten older and didn't need them anymore. But then the terms of the situation began to creep in, a disturbing mess of dread pressing up through a thin sheet of ice, swimming just beneath the frozen surface, demanding to be given attention. He felt like he should say something else, but every sentence died before it even left his mouth. Where would he even start? He just stood there, tension growing more and more palpable in the air, the simple sounds of the staffbot's wheels and the restless flicking of his ears seeming to grow louder and louder in a feeble attempt to fill the awkward silence. Finally, proving once again that it wasn't his imagination, she asked him, "Can you please let me through, Teddy?" Freddy sighed, still not moving from his guarded stance. "I'll let you through if you answer some questions." She didn't object yet, so he continued, "Vanny, please be honest. What is all of this about? Why did you give me that chip? And why did you chip the others?" A long pause stretched out between them after that. Finally, she said, "That's not important right now. Listen, you gotta let me through so I can capture Gregory. I need him." Several more footsteps treaded towards him, but he held his ground firmly, giving the invisible figure a stern glare. "Vanessa, I am not letting you through until you explain." "I don't have to waste time explaining everything to you," Vanessa said, louder now. "You don't have to worry about all of that. You won't even remember this. This isn't the first..." She caught herself, trying to recover in a rush. I could just shock you unconscious and erase your memories if I wanted to, but I'm not. I'm trying to be civil right now, and you're not listening." Freddy couldn't move. A pressure slowly built inside of his chest, growing dizzy as his processor tried to understand exactly what was standing in front of him. Eventually, Vanessa exhaled loudly and collected herself again. Sorry, I'm just tired." "What do you mean, erase my..." he tried to say, but Vanessa quickly interrupted him. "Freddy, I know I've been really distant lately, but you have to trust me on this. You're one of my closest friends." "Sun and Moon are your closest friends," Freddy objected, "and I haven't seen you visit them once in the past month." "You don't visit them either," Vanessa argued. That's because they don't like me, Freddie said. But you're like a daughter to them. He let that slowly sink in, and then said, Vanessa, has something been going on lately? You've been acting really strange. You barely even look me in the eye anymore, and now you're hiding in that suit. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Freddie said, still staring down that empty space in the air. Why are you going after Gregory in that suit? If you were actually trying to give him back to his parents, you wouldn't have put it on. You could have just stayed in your work clothes so I could see you, but instead you're sneaking around and it doesn't make any sense and you're scaring me. I am not... She quickly swallowed down her yell, replacing it with slow, measured breathing. Okay, she said, the irritation boiling behind her words. You're still not listening to me, you still don't get it, but I can forgive you for that. Get what yet? What are you trying to accomplish here? Why are you doing all of this? Freddie dug his claws into the palms of his hands, trying to ground himself and reproduce the gentle tone that would usually put children at ease. Vanessa, you can tell me anything. I won't get mad. After a few moments of rigid silence, Vanessa mumbled out, You wouldn't understand. I feel like I would if you just opened up to me, he said. Please, be honest. I want to help. Freddie, I can't tell you why, but you have to trust me on this, Vanessa said, her voice taking on a note of trembling desperation. Don't you trust me? No, not right now, Freddie said, even though the words felt like burning coals in his mouth. Not since you put a dangerous programming chip in me. Listen, it'll all make sense once it's over, she said, her footsteps approaching again, a slanted shadow on the wall shifting closer and closer to his. Please let me through. I'm trying to save you. No! He stamped his foot down, and her advancement ceased. He swore that he could feel the surge of electricity running through his wires, beginning to overheat, even though he was staying firmly in one spot. Vanessa, you can't possibly expect me to step aside and let you do who knows what to a child, Freddie said, his chest swelling with hurt. If you weren't wearing an invisible rabbit suit, if you didn't chip me and my family, if you didn't drag Gregory to Lost and Found, yeah, maybe then I would have trusted you. But you did all of that. The least you can do is explain to me why you did it. His mind began to cling to the previous wild theories that he had conjured up. Was it someone else? Did someone force you to do it? Is it Afton? Is Moon actually right this time? For a while, the lobby was so quiet he could hear the whistling of the air conditioning clicking back on, the whirring of the staffbot's wheels, and even the pumping of his inner mechanisms keeping him standing there between her and the door. I'm trying to help you here, Vanessa said. She had a new edge to her voice, a new dangerous force masquerading as patience. Can you stop being dumb for just a second and listen to me? She asked. I'm being serious. I don't have much time. You have to give him to me before it's too late. How is capturing Gregory for an unknown reason going to help me? Her voice disappeared, just long enough for him to wonder if he scared her off. Do you really want me to tell you? She asked. Yes, he said immediately. All right, then. You asked for it. She lowered to a whisper, shuffling closer. He waited with bated breath, even though he was terrified at the answer. Gregory destroyed Chica and Roxy within minutes of meeting them, she told him, each word suffocating. And he's planning to destroy you next. Even though she had been quiet, it felt like her words echoed sharply off the distant walls of the mall, bringing a scared stillness to the dark place. He couldn't move, not towards her or away from her. And judging by the look on your face, he lied about it too, Vanessa said. Destroyed? Freddie said, his voice shaking so bad he thought it might give out. What do you mean destroyed? They survived, Vanessa reassured him. But trust me, he did his best to kill them, and probably thought that he got away with it too. He just hurt them pretty bad and knocked them out cold, but you might not be so lucky once he tries the same thing on you. Freddy backed up, accidentally bumping into the doors of Monty's Raceway, having to be reminded again by his programming to not trespass. But at this point, the ringing in his ears almost blocked it out entirely. "What are you talking about?" Freddy said, trying to shake off the stunned silence that had claimed him. How would he do that? He's just a kid." "He may be a kid, but that is exactly why he's dangerous," Vanessa countered. "All he had to do was look cute and innocent, and your programming told you to protect him at all costs." Freddy just stared, unable to make sense of that, feeling like he was falling apart. "It's not your fault," Vanessa said. "Your program is confusing you. It's stopping you from seeing through him. He's not being sweet because you comfort him. He's doing it because he is scared of you, and scared of what you'll do if you find out what he's really like." He tried to think over it, but his thoughts were getting even more sluggish. Could his program actually do that? What if there actually were signs? What if his mind was just erasing them? No, he was a kid. He was the priority. Even if he did hurt Chica and Roxy, he said that they attacked him first because of the chips. No, was that statement just his program? How many of his thoughts were his? He was getting very quickly overwhelmed with all of this, but she just kept on going. "He has been using you, Freddy. Every word he has spoken to you has been a lie," Vanessa said, voice drawing nearer, her shadow slinking over the tiles. "He didn't just get lost. He came here to destroy the machines that have given him nightmares his entire life." She snorted a little bit. It's not a very well thought out or long-lasting plan, but you work with kids all the time. You know that they aren't always reasonable. All that he needed was a little help from you to live out this heroic fantasy. The only reason you haven't noticed is because of your programming. Freddy was getting a little dizzy, his mind running over the events of tonight, still not finding anything. "Vanessa, I'm sorry, but how would you know all of this for certain?" Freddy interrupted. "He hasn't done anything. I've been with him the whole night. I would have noticed if he hurt Chica and Roxy." "Would you?" Vanessa said. "Do you really think that you would? You haven't been able to follow him. You've only been listening to the pieces that he wants to tell you. You haven't actually seen Chica or Roxy in several hours, have you?" He hated how he couldn't recall the right memory, not even the slightest hint. "Do you know what happened to your friends?" Doubt crept up on him. Still, he said, "Yes, they attacked him." "Yes, but do you know what he did to them afterward?" Vanessa pressed. "Come on, you're smart, right?" She let that question hang in the air, letting it draw out as he failed to fill it. "You want to know what he did to Chica?" She went on, ignoring his confusion. "He pushed her into the garbage compactor and crushed her with it. Her beak fell right off from the looks of it. And Roxy," she went on, not giving him a moment to think, "Roxy was just as brutal. I watched him do it. He took off the railing from the Gold Point platform and shot her in the eyes. She fell off the side and broke, but even after that, he kept on shooting her eyes until they melted into her face, ruined beyond repair." The vivid descriptions sank their teeth deep into Freddy, sending poison spilling over his inner workings. The thudding in his chest grew louder, beginning to overheat. Before it got too far, though, Freddy stopped. This was ridiculous. The idea of Gregory doing something like that just didn't make sense. In fact, it was becoming less and less believable the longer that he held the thought in his head. It was a trick. And according to what Vanessa said at the beginning, Freddy caught something out of the corner of his eye. He forced himself not to look directly at it, instead stalling with, "No, he wouldn't do that. He's a child. What are you talking about?" "Don't make the same mistake the others did," Vanessa countered. "Chica and Roxy played around of him and delayed giving in to me, and look what happened." Freddy edged closer to the left, keeping his gaze on the empty air that she occupied. He had to do it fast. His neck prickled beneath the collar, the horrible thing disguised as a bow tie as it always was. She could shock him at any time if she still had the remote on her person, which he didn't doubt for a moment. After he's gotten rid of Monty and Moon, what do you think will happen? Do you really think that he'll be done? No, he won't. Freddy's back leg brushed against it. He readied himself, face curling up, flexing his claws. Once he gets rid of your entire family, Vanessa told him, he's going to go for you next. In one swift motion, Freddy grabbed a paint bucket behind one of the face paint counters, ripped the top off, and threw it right at Vanessa. A wall of purple paint soared towards her in an arc, splattering against a solid part of the empty air that cringed back with a yelp. He'd missed most of her. She was farther to the right than he thought, but it was just enough to cover her shoulder, a part of her arm, and half of her face. The paint stuck to her, the splattered parts of her hovering in the air, giving her away. It was enough. With that, Freddy dropped the paint bucket and lunged at her, just as she sent a controlled shock through the collar. Incident reports. After hours on May 3rd, 2083, Vanessa supposedly lost connection with a security camera set in the mall's lobby. By the time she arrived at the area to investigate, a fountain in the area had been cracked and a headless staff bot was stuck in the water. When we took a look at the cameras, the lenses seemed like they had been melted somehow. Assessment. We are unsure who did this, but if anyone in the company is behind this, they will be severely punished. Jeremy Miller. Over the span of June 4th to June 19th, we were given multiple complaints of a strong foul odor in Chica's kitchen. On June 20th, after being approached by Chica, a child threw up because of the overwhelming smell. After some convincing, Chica told her manager that she had been eating garbage at night because of apparent hunger pains. Assessment. Do not punish her, let her continue. This has provided us with a way to compact a lot of excess garbage at nighttime and cut the cost of running the trash compactor, while also stopping her from eating food during the day. Schedule the technicians to clean her stomach and beak every morning so the odor will dissipate. Jeremy Miller. Guys, the power went out, so I'm recording this in a dark closet with a flashlight, so I need to go very fast before I get a migraine. Okay, so, yay! We got to see Vanessa's manipulative behavior in action. I think that this is the first on-screen conversation that she's had with a character so far. I wouldn't really call this her motive, but it's a piece of the truth that she blew out of proportion, basically just to gaslight Freddy. Anyway, I'll be able to post the next episode next Friday. We're still keeping ahead of the hiatus, so just, that's it. Thanks for watching, bye! Pray for me.